What are some of the takeaways about him crushing it?
Having this kind of a psychological advantage of belonging to these clubs and taking all these bankers, etc., to these expensive clubs is a very big part of it.
Well, when you're 20 years old, they're not going to expect you, and they'll be overwhelmed. They'll be surprised that you take them to an expensive club. They'll think it's your dad's club. They just will. And when I first became a member, I know in 1981, I actually looked young. Hard for you to maybe believe, but 36 years ago, I looked young. So when I went to the Jonathan Club, they thought I was there because of my dad. Well, my dad was never a member of anything like that. But when I came back, we went. We had a trustee meeting of my trust there with 3 of the trustees, and my number at the Jonathan Club is 445, which means I'm almost dead because the numbers are low, you know, and they have numbers all the way up to 20,000 now or 19,000. In most of the clubs, you get a better deal if you're less than 40. Some of the clubs less than 35. Virtually all the clubs if you're less than 30. And they got a one-eyed Chinaman deal too. If you know, they shouldn't, but they do. And so they've got other kinds of deals. I never looked into any of those deals, but it's impressive. Even though I forgot the name of the club, the Claremont Club, the club that's mostly Arabic that I belong into London, and I go maybe once every other year. I don't even go anymore because I don't use it like that. But I mean, because in Europe, all the big cities, everybody that's above a manager in an accounting firm, and they use the firm's club. They have a membership. I mean, let's go to the club for lunch. Not for me because I don't like lunch, but let's go to the club for dinner. And it's a national adjunct. But the kids get it done in Starbucks. That's still beyond my, I'm pretty, I can get out of my comfort zone, but having a meeting at Starbucks is worse to me than jumping off the fucking stratosphere of 108 floors. It doesn't compute. I've had too many meetings, but it works. So I'm not here to tell you. I mean, Josh he said he met that lady buying the business from her at a Starbucks. So that does work. Just as some of the kids, all you being kids, rent a little office for a few $100 a month at one of those places that we talked about yesterday or the day before. I mean, but that's not a requirement. One of the most successful gals, she was doing nursery roll-ups. Nursery, where you buy plants and shit. And she would meet people in the lobby. She was English of the big hotels for a tea or a coffee. And she had 3 members of the House of Lords on her board. And I sat across the lobby watching her, and she was so nervous. She had her hands on her knees like this because her knees were shaking, and because she had never done anything like that. And but anything else on Joe?
The power of the board and the effect that it can have when you're pitching to the big four, how they're falling over you versus you trying to convince them.
Yeah, well, that coupled with he's a doctor and he's doing a medical deal. And he'd be the first to tell you, like he said, he didn't know what the fuck anything. There's a big difference. I'm not putting words in his mouth. I'm cutting somebody's leg open or whatever, and rolling up companies. I mean, it's a geometric difference. But now he's, who'd have thunk it? But you don't have to. We have guys and gals doing medical roll-ups that have, don't have any medical background. They maybe were a nurse at some, not a nurse. What do you call them? A pretend nurse. When you're volunteering. Anyway, volunteering as a nurse someplace. So it really doesn't matter. Yeah, there was a question there.
Yeah, Joe, what kind of shit have you been doing to push your comfort zone? listening to Dan. Like, I think whenever I'm in a decision tree, like where, I have to think, like, am I going to do this? I think, what would Dan do? Like, not what Joe would do. And then I make myself do it. Pretty much that, and pretty much that.
Pushing the sellers is hard for him because they're professionally, they're doctors. He's a doctor. They're colleagues and all that stuff. And I never felt that. And especially out of finance, like I came out of, you showed any weakness, they cut your head off. Whereas the doctors, by definition, are supposed to have empathy and sympathy and, the Hippocratic Oath and all that. Where I was trained, if you had the Hippocratic Oath, you wound up dead. Because they'd cut your head off. So, and pushing the emotional bank account and pushing people to remember, leadership is not when they want to do it. Leadership is getting them to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. And if you're not used to that, like when Shekels, Sergeant Shekels, now some of you probably can relate to. She was a sergeant in the Israeli army. Okay, she probably hasn't been bragging about it. You tell anybody? No. Okay.
I have, but it's a normal thing.
Yeah. So Sergeant Shekels over there, you don't get to be a sergeant at a young age like she was, unless you're slapping people around, which she kind of demonstrated last night. You don't. You just don't. So forevermore, she will be Sergeant Shekels to me, Okay, anything about, before we get to the crescendo going here, is there anything about any of the examples that you want me to further expand or exemplify or explore or whatever? Okay. Take one and pass it around. No. Yeah, that's fine. Just take one and pass it around.
Oh my God.
Just one to each. You don't have to take two, Melanie.
It's just one.
Turning it upside down doesn't mean it changed the name. Andrew, would you read out loud what it says on the package, please?
Medicated cream for the Vagisil. Cunt cream.
Cunt cream. Now, why am I giving you a tube of cunt cream? Because you're all cunts. And I don't want you to forget it. Put that on your fucking, tape it to your laptop or put whatever. Now we had one kid in here who was an engineering student, Chinese kid, who didn't know, he didn't know what that was. And I said, he's 22, he's probably watching, and I said, well, if you don't know what it is and what they do with that, that's why you can't get your little weenie in it. You guys and gals, and not just you, but the YouTubers, you might as well just be a vagina, because that's how you act, and you got to toughen up. And remember, you don't have to be an alpha male, but the non-alphas still are assassins, and they get shit done. And, this dramatic way of me wanting to emphasize that everybody in this room's got to get tougher. But you're here, as Dr. Joe said, and as compared to the people that aren't here. They just have bad shit to say because they don't like the guy third from the end. They don't like his haircut, or the guy's too skinny, that guy's too fat. Those are also the kind of comments I get. But we're down on death threats. So either those people have stopped following me, which is fine with me, or maybe somebody whacked them like they should be whacked. But I mean, you got to toughen up. You got to toughen. Remember, thick skin, as Adenauer, the former mayor of Berlin, said, is a gift from God. Is a gift from God. Thick skin, and that's why the kids that have a sales background have a slight advantage. Only a slight advantage, because they're more used to rejection. But even the best salesman, and I'm one of the better ones, doesn't like rejection. I mean, but now I've got such scar tissue on my body that I don't feel it. But that could be why I'm so sensitive too. All these years of getting beat up and all that shit. Seriously, you got to toughen up, and the sooner you get to smiling and dialing, the better off you're going to be. The better off you're going to be. Now, for the YouTubes that we didn't have on YouTube, we just had one of our alumni, Dr. Joe, who's a vascular surgeon who is rolling up critical healthcare places in Southern California, amongst other places. And this is his third seminar. He went to one regular, one hardcore now. And to refresh his database, because, as he will attest to, it's easy to fall back at a default. And the more educated, the more spreadsheeting you can do, and the more calculations you can do, forgetting just the time of doing all the procrastination, but you can convince yourself that on a subconscious level that this isn't such a great thing for you. And remember the chart that we did, money's not important, money's dirty, money's this, money's that, that's all horseshit. And the people that say that are the people that have no money. I never met anybody that's got any money whatsoever, any to speak of, that said money was dirty. Because you can do good things with money. You can go save the world. That's not my forte, but I mean, for some of you, it will be. We're going to go into the close. So is there anything else you would like to ask me before we start the drums rolling? Okay, go ahead.
Could you explain more or go into a bit more in detail with government contracts? I was very, very...
Joe, at least we got a doctor here that can resuscitate me. Okay, I'm just 2-3 minutes. Some of the biggest winners on the Hall of Fame back there have gone into government contracts, the big national governments, local governments, municipalities, you name it. Unfortunately, they overpay. And now the bidding system for government contracting, as was pointed out by at least one of you in the page that they looked at, had 92,000 contracts. Was that UK or US? UK. 92,000 contracts put out by the government just for the UK. There's easily that many numbers for the US, and Germany has it. I mean, the government contracts. And now, instead of bidding twice a year, once a year, now they virtually bid every day. And they're updating the contracts every day. And one of you asked me, they looked at the government contracts and it says they want a company name. And though their company is in this area and the contracts that they were looking at are in this area, should I still put my company name? The answer is yes. The answer is they don't say, just because your company's ABC and this is XYZ, they don't say, do you do business in this? That goes, that's down the line. And by that time, you will have found a joint venture partner that can actually perform on the contract. Just as I've mentioned 5, 6, 7 times, examples of kids that have come through here that went out and bid governments. And I, 35 years ago, started with a government contract. And just to refresh everybody's memory, I bid on JP 1 and 2, which is jet fuel, that I saw that there was a shortage of, and I saw that there was a shortage in refining, undercapacity. So I married the undercapacity refinery with a big, which I thought was big contract with the Defense Fuel Center, which is part of the federal government. First contract I got was $20 million. Second contract I got was $20 million. And then they gave me a $10 million contract at the end. I didn't bid on it because if they don't spend the money, they lose it. And so I did $50,540,000 revenue. I had one employee, which is me. And of course, I used that leverage of $50 million revenue to build the old Great Western dynasty, as they say. And they've been doing government contracts since 100 years before. I showed you a slide earlier today from the Civil War, American Civil War, 1865-ish. A promoter, a scumbag said, you can sell the government anything at almost any price if you ask. So they've been doing this a long time. And I'm not saying that you're going to take advantage of the governments to make them overpay. That's just their norm. They like overpaying. They want to overpay because they want to make sure they get the money out the door. And they want to make sure that you perform. Now, if you don't perform on a government contract, it'll only happen once. So you got to perform, because then they put your name in a blackball list, and whatever bid you bid after that will be thrown out. But it's not that difficult to perform, and most people are reticent or hesitant to bid government contracts from the stigma of days gone by when the paperwork was this high. I mean, when I did it. And now it's still got a stigma of doing government. Some people, I'm not going to do business with the government. Bullshit. Well, there's a lot of people getting rich. People have set up offices in Washington, D.C. to be closer to the bidding process. People have set up offices wherever the head of bidding for the UK is. The same with Germany and these other places. They set up offices and they staff them up. So because they have spot bids. A bid may come up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 1600 military time, if you're not there and you don't know it, or you don't have somebody monitoring the government contract list, and I'm sure you guys with some kind of software can have them pop up, show you whenever a government contract comes up, and then you bid it, and then you built a database, a Rolodex. Oh, these guys do petroleum, these guys do healthcare items, these guys do this, these guys, and and you email them. I've got a $700,000 bid on such and such. Can you fill it? And they get back to you. We got one guy here that has actually gone after some contracts and looked at them and has some knowledge. And I'm sure he got the idea from he listened to me on YouTube or right?
I've done them before, but then
well, you did them before.
Let's do the JV deal.
Okay.
Done the JV deal.
Yeah.
Like, boom, perfect.
Yeah, and doing a joint venture because you build instant credibility, instant track record by having these guys partner up with you, and just as I did back in the day, and 3 or 4 guys up there created hundreds of millions of equity and value by doing contracts with the federal government. And now they've got government contracts for EU, and all the countries in the EU. They've got, and now they've got solar, and they've got all kinds of stuff. And as I said, NEOM, is going to have more or less 500 billion in contracts. And I misspoke this morning. The first tranche of the contract for NEOM is 200 billion. I said 2 billion. I went back and looked at it again. I missed the zeros. So that's over the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, YouTube. See you later. Thank you.